Hi, we're here today with Rafi Vartian from MeldCX, one of our exciting partners, helping bring artificial intelligence capabilities to all of our end users. We're going to talk a bit today, I think, about hospitality. But let's start first. Rafi, can you tell me briefly a bit about what MeldCX is doing?
Sure. Thank you very much for having us on this fireside chat here, Joe. Again, my name is Rafi Varti, and I'm the VP for Business Development Strategic Partnerships, based out of Chicago, but the company is based out of Melbourne, Australia. We're about 70 people globally, so we're out of the startup phase. We're kind of a young company doing a lot of innovation around two kind of key core parts of our business. The first is what we call MELDCore, which is device application and peripheral management. That is what the Marriott kiosk is kind of built on, and we can go in depth about how that solution is created and the importance of the partnership with Intel. And also, we have another part which is computer vision. We are looking at taking cameras and turning them into data collection devices effectively, utilizing AI and ML training to use the OpenVINO models that Intel provides to rapidly train, scale, and deploy really innovative solutions, at least in our opinion.
So, can you tell me a little bit about the kind of requirements or needs that your hotel customers have? What are they looking to solve with computer vision?
Absolutely. Well, as everyone knows, right, COVID made a massive impact within all sectors, but particularly in discretionary or business travel, right? You can see that in the airlines, you can see that in the hotels, entertainment venues. This project that we were working actually predates COVID. And interestingly, is one of the only projects that survived because the need was effectively to provide better customer service when there are queues or lines instead of going through a traditional check-in process. For those of us that are business travelers or used to be business travelers, coming in from a delayed flight into a large queue into Newark Airport at about 1 o'clock in the morning was the least great thing about travel, right? You want to get in your hotel as quickly as possible. So we had to work out what that meant. As the pandemic kind of unveiled itself of March of last year, the solution didn't change very much, but some of the requirements expanded, if you will. Yeah. So the reduction in interaction with the folks that we were doing as part of the check-in process was actually critical, right? Because of transmission concerns. As opposed to plexiglass, you can interact with a kiosk. But what they're really starting to get interested in was, what about the cleaning aspect of it, right? And what we found is we could tell people how to clean the entirety of the touch screen and all the things that are around it using a combination of anonymized collection of kind of touches within the screen and also kind of camera technology to see where people are interacting with the screens as well. So it kind of expanded upon the use cases, of which the core application really didn't change very much. It's still a self check-in kiosk, but the usage increased, if you will.
That's fantastic. And I think there is so many areas for improving the customer experience through computer vision. If you look a bit to the future, where do you see this going for the hospitality industry?
Well, there's two things, right? If you look at the way that Meld is kind of situated within the kiosk industry, we are part of the middleware business, if you will, right? We're in there to help customers kind of BYOA, if you will, bring your own application that they can essentially port into our infrastructure and be able to run it. So they're controlling the consumer experience, but we're handling all the back end, the device management, PCI compliance, all of that out of band management activity that can be done. But really, they're looking at it to say, okay, well, it works very well for self check-in. What are some of the other applications we could be using the same investment for? So food ordering has come up quite a bit. Looking at it as a digital concierge, as a wayfinding application, and even going into employee training and onboarding as staff has turned over quite a bit, not just in the hospitality industry, of course, but kind of broadly as economies have opened up. So we see that in the kiosk world, at least, it's kind of taking an investment and reutilizing it many times for many different purposes, kind of application switching and be able to doing it in a secure environment. As it relates to computer vision, it's it's about data, right? But it's about anonymized data. So we, as an organization, don't collect biometric information from scratch, right? We created all of our models utilized in synthetic data. That's a whole big conversation I'm happy to have. But really, what we're trying to do is provide the same type of information that end customers get from a web or mobile, right? The same level of metadata and statistics and information about customer journey, and bring that into brick and mortar effectively. Yeah.
What we like about Meld CX, I mean, we're really big on protecting personal privacy at Intel. It's part of our core value. And we've always been advocates of using anonymous data. We don't think it makes sense to try to track and find an individual. It's much more relevant to understand behavior and what's happening right now with the person in your store or in your environment, and how do I best serve that person.
Yeah, absolutely. If you'll forgive me the cliche, content is king, right? It's always the big phrase. But in the reality is context is king, if you will. Contextual information that we can gather, again, anonymously about users, well, not looking at biometric information about face or things like that, could tell us a great deal. One of the big examples that we have is we've got a customer that is running an advertising network in Australia that is looking for specific products. Because if someone is walking down the street, regardless of age or gender or anything like that, or even what they're wearing, if they're carrying a $5,000 Gucci bag, that tells you a lot about who that person is.
And that's no different than if you walk in a shop and this associate notices you're carrying a $5,000 Gucci bag. Same thing.
We're looking at what are the important pieces of context within an environment, so it's not as kind of an on-off switch, male, female, hot, cold, that kind of thing. What's the context behind the data that you're gathering? And the anonymized data in many cases is actually more valuable than if you were to be invasive and looking into the individual.
And this is where I think consumers expect our customers to be headed. Not taking all this personal data. The governments are leaning in. One other area I'd like to touch on. A concern I think a lot of customers have is this is going to be too hard, too complex. I'm going to get stuck into a situation where I can't manage it myself anymore. Can you talk a little bit about demystifying this a bit and show how it's not really that difficult anymore?
Well, yeah. Well, that's part of what we're doing here today, right? Our job is to tell stories that speak to the use cases that have a lot of complexity underneath it, right? The basic example that we have as Meld, right, is that either on the device management kind of Meld core side or on the Vienna side, it's a click and launch concept and idea, right? It's all very WYSIWYG kind of UIs. So instead of having machine learning or AI specialists, for example, in computer vision on your team that may say, I'm going to build a model, I'm going to train a model, I'm going to deploy a model, that's a long process, right? What we try to do is we say, here's all the boxes that we know you're going to need to check, yeah? From core, we're saying ServiceNow integration, from Vienna, it's saying people counting, parking management. Click this button, send it, test it, try it, see what data you can gather from it. Yeah. And if there's more complex use cases that would require more scoping, we can get into that. But what we try to do is we try to just kind of give the tools to the customer in a very WYSIWYG way to allow them to experience it for themselves.
Well, I think that's our goal. And we're about out of time today, but I think, the key, if you have a business problem, analytics and AI technology are ready and easy. And reach out to partners like Meld CX. Thanks, Rafi, for your time today.
Joe, thank you so much.